You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Corte, and joining me now, a man who spent his career turning philanthropic dollars into real community impact. Vincent Jones, CEO of Beyond Impact, is with us, and a voice who always tells us what's actually happening at the intersection of politics and pop culture, Al Reynolds. Gentlemen, welcome back to A More Perfect Union.
You know, I'm glad to be back, but I'm upset.
Uh-oh.
I am upset that Brother Jones' picture looks better than mine on the promotional material. And I need to know, who did I need to talk to over in the human resources or graphics department to have that check. That's all I got to say.
There is no universe where Al Reynolds does not look fine as can be. What are you talking about?
Okay, all right. Now you're going to light up these YouTube comments in a second.
Look, don't tempt me with a good time on a Wednesday night.
Well, it's so good to have you all here. Obviously, we have all been just gripped by a number of very tragic stories. One, locally here in Los Angeles, Eric Washington, a beloved public servant, was murdered in Compton, having a lot of people that are just absolutely, in complete despair about what just happened in Compton to this really incredible community leader. And then in Mississippi, the death of Nolan Wells. Let's start there. Nolan, who's 18 years old. He was 18 years old, an athlete out of Ocean Springs, Mississippi. He went missing on July 4th, a July 4th boat trip to Horn Island, and is found dead 2 days later. His family has now retained Ben Crump. Al, you track this space pretty closely. What stands out to you about how fast this case escalated to needing a civil rights attorney like Ben Crump?
Well, in my opinion, it had to, because there were too many unanswers. We weren't getting facts. We weren't getting timelines. We weren't getting real witnesses. We didn't have any records. The police was not giving us accountability. And given the scene where you saw 90% of the participants on the island or in the festives did not look like us, of course, this is how they were going to get answers. Now, I want to say this as respectfully as I possibly can. Some lawyers are brilliant courtroom technicians. That's not Ben Crump's lane. Some are constitutional scholars. That's not his lane. And some are even behind the scenes strategists. That's not his lane. But let me tell you what his lane is. Ben Crump is a genius because he not only understands the law, but he understands media, he understands public pressure, he understands grief, and he knows when to play the race card when it comes to national attention to get national answers from people that are trying to sweep something underneath the rug. That's why we hire Ben Crump. That's why we run it up the totem pole or whatever that pole is that we have to run this, ringing the alarm on, because we know that they cannot ignore him and the concerns and the voice that he has, not only in our community, but throughout the nation.
Vincent, from a community impact lens, when a family has to hire a civil rights lawyer just to get a transparent death investigation for their son, what does that tell us about the trust in these systems right now?
In this case, it tells me that those families of those kids have a lot of power. Mm-hmm. From what I understand, one of their parents is a judge. I think another one is a police chief. They're supremely connected, and all of them, every one of them, their families and the kids, they're no longer on social media. Like, they have coordinated their response. So what that suggests to me, if I was watching this on TV, I would say there's a smoking gun. Something has happened. And you need somebody like Brother Crump who can really be able to drive attention to the matter and try to cut through this cloak of secrecy that these powerful folks have in those families.
I mean, this morning I watched the live stream of conversation that Ben Crump had with Don Lemon on the Don Lemon Show, and learned a number of things, including when Nolan's family got his phone back, there were a number of text messages to some of those kids that were deleted. And so that was another red flag. In addition, we learned that Nolan was actually a good swimmer. I mean, he was, a Division I athlete, and so no surprise there. But we also learned that Nolan, was someone who had been friends with them for some time. This wasn't just sort of like, okay, a random boat trip, but there was some relationship there. They had gone to high school together. And so a lot of people are paying extra close attention to every single detail here, even though it feels very eerie. It feels very eerie. Here we have this story unfolding, and things are perhaps going to get a little eerier because on Friday, they're expecting that independent autopsy. The independent autopsy results, they're expecting that on Friday. Al, what should we be paying attention to as information comes out related to that independent autopsy?
So for me, I got to be honest with you. I need to know who the independent autopsy person is. I need to know what their track record is. Who have they worked on in the past? Because when you have powerful people moving in concert, like Brother Jones says, I don't trust anybody unless it's somebody I know personally. I think what we need to look for in particular is wording, narrative, how they explain certain things. If anything sounds fishy, I'm going to say it's fishy. And I know that that's a horrible state to be in because usually we rely on these types of things to give us clarity. But in this particular case, when 16, 17, and 18-year-olds become more strategic about their phones and their social media than they are about where they go to school and how they make money, we know that it's silence and it's strategy for a reason. So an autopsy to me has to be more than just a basic autopsy. It has to give us details. It has to be detailed. It has to be comprehensive. It has to be exhaustive, in my opinion, in order for me to believe it.
Vincent, we know that the Trump Justice Department has been quite hostile to Black communities, investigations that are seeking justice for, civil rights violations. We've seen a complete backsliding from this Department of Justice when it comes to civil rights investigations. Ben Crump said as much in that interview with Don Lemon, where they can't really turn to the federal government for support. And so they have to work with state and local officials in Mississippi. How confident are you that even if they follow the facts in a state like Mississippi, that justice will ultimately be served for Nolan?
If we look at this in a historical perspective, here we go, Brother Al, I'm about to get some history. Lynching happened a lot in Mississippi. And I forget the organization, it may have been the NAACP. They did a report recently, like in May or something like that, about modern day lynching. And they found that in the last few years, there's been about 75 or so lynchings that they could definitely say were lynchings. 20 of them were in Mississippi. So something is still happening in Mississippi that we have not addressed despite all these years of progress, quote unquote progress. And I also want to note we're ominously close to the anniversary of the day that Emmett Till was murdered, August 28th. And I know that date because at Beyond Impact, we're organizing a donor tour to Mississippi to be able to help people to see the conditions on the ground, what we're organizing against to be able to improve the systems that people are living under, because the state apparatus in Mississippi is still hostile to people who do not have power, people who look like us, people who don't have the resources to hire expensive lawyers. So it is unfortunate right now that the Trump, quote unquote, Justice Department is closed to people who look like us, especially in Mississippi, where people who live there who have not had justice for a long time.
I saw a post that I think Joy Reid might have reposted this afternoon. It looked like one of Nolan's friends had put up sort of a tribute post, and it really just sort of broke my heart. That a young teenage kid is having to put up that kind of tribute post for a friend that obviously meant a lot to him, a friend that nobody was prepared to lose. Al, what's your message to some of the young people out there that may not be as steeped in the history of what's happened in Mississippi, the injustices that have happened in Mississippi, that right now are just saying, wait a minute, what happened to my friend, right? What's your message to some of the young people out there that are getting tapped in to this case?
The message is those stories that your parents tell you, they're not just stories to take up noise or to make noise or to take up time. They're real life stories of lived experiences, and you are not immune to these lived experiences of people that has spanned hundreds of years. Also, I want to say this is why you cannot allow for institutions, educational institutions, high schools, to take, even colleges, to take the Black history out of this classroom. This is an opportunity where they're not shocked because they see this, but they understand because they were taught this. So for me, the message to them is, listen, it may feel like different times, but in so many ways, if you knew the history, you would know that time doesn't do anything but repeat itself, especially in the United States.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Switching gears, we know that a judge has ordered the release of the $5.8 million that Trump owed E. Carroll after his team tried to block the payout, at least, at the last minute they did. Al, is anybody really surprised here?
That he had to pay it out?
That ultimately the judge said, run her check.
I am. I am, because he writes their check. The Supreme Court actually said, hey, I think though they had to. Now, if they had allowed this to be overturned, they would have definitely been looked at more than side eye how we look at them now, because this is a basic liable case. This wasn't a criminal case. This is a liable case. He was found liable. How are you going to set a precedence that your lower judges don't have the right or the capacity as lawyers in the Supreme Court to make these types of decisions? So to even escalate it to the Supreme Court, hopefully to get, one of those, hey, I put you there, you need to give me this one. They would have definitely compromised every single thing about that cabinet. And I'm glad that they didn't. You can spend this a lot of different ways. But at the end of the day, the sitting president of the United States of America was found liable for sexual assault and abuse. Period. Point blank.
Vincent, in about a minute, is there a broader lesson here about accountability actually catching up, even slowly, even for the most powerful person in the country?
Unfortunately, I don't think so, because she hasn't gotten her money. What I wish she would do is talk to Cardi B, who has had her foot on that podcaster's neck about her money, and figure out some ways to be able to get it, because he has to pay that money. And it's unfortunate that he's been found guilty. He probably spent more money fighting paying that money than he will actually pay.
Ain't that some stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, when we come forward, Al's about to
call the graphics department.
Well, that too, but we're going to talk about the flood in political ads. It's some people say it's a leveling tool. Some people say it's a lying machine. We're going to ask Al and Vincent what they think. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai and delighted to be in conversation with Vincent Jones, the CEO of Beyond Impact, and Al Reynolds, our politics and pop culture correspondent. Since we were on break, a little bit of breaking news. Graham Plattner has dropped his bid for Senate after facing an allegation of rape. NPR is reporting that the scandal-ridden Senate campaign of Graham Plattner in Maine has come to a screeching end after a rape allegation caused nearly everyone of his Democratic allies to withdraw their support. Plattner made the announcement in a video that was posted to social media not too long ago, saying, quotes, "We believe that for the movement to continue, it can't be me. And for that reason, we are suspending campaign operations." We know that he also did not pass up the opportunity to sort of, blame the establishment. Vincent, I know you've been tracking some of the noise from this campaign pretty closely. What do you make of Graham Plattner ending his campaign?
It's a failure of vetting. My understanding is that in this race, the campaign manager chose to go the cheap route and do a less thorough vetting process and didn't surface the things that would have derailed his campaign. And now it has the potential to make it so that our chances of winning back the Senate are less likely. So that's an unfortunate thing. But I'm glad that he did decide to step down or to suspend his campaign. He was acting as if he wasn't going to do that and making it more complicated for the party to find another candidate. It's interesting to see what the state party does, because what I've been reading, that they're trying to figure out a process to be able to find somebody rather than just anoint somebody. Hopefully, whatever they do creates a situation where the final candidate is poised to win, because we need to take that seat.
Al, is it just me or does this feel like deja vu? Right? Yeah. Here the Democrats go again. You got another consequential election, a consequential race. And in this case, to Vincent's point, simple vetting could have prevented this from happening. Is it just me, or are Democrats in these races sort of over-indexing and getting in their own way?
No disrespect to you, Brother Jones. No disrespect to you, Brother Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Our president, our sitting president, sir, has been found liable of doing exactly what has caused this man to drop out of an election. Right? So you got the president that's getting away with it. So maybe he was like, oh, well, maybe if the sitting president of the United States can get away with such disgusting stuff, maybe I'll have a time too. I'm kidding on that. But it's true, right? Like if your president has the ability to be found liable for sexual assault, right, or abuse, isn't that the same thing, or I would say adjacent or neighbor of what this what this politician is being accused of? I think the good thing here, though, is that he did drop out. Thank goodness. And I think, when you got a sitting president that trivializes the political process and the political figures in America, you can't be upset when other people want to emulate it.
Vincent, to Al's point, I think there are a number of people on the internet and off that point out the difference in how Republicans and Democrats respond to allegations like this. There are a number of folks who have noted that, if Graham Plattner was running as a Republican in Maine, he probably would get the Ken Paxton treatment from Texas, meaning they would say, press on, right? Deny, deny, deny.
Right.
I'm not saying that he should or shouldn't, but what do you make of folks who raise that question? The question that Democrats, seem to fold perhaps, too early, or Democrats, play by a different playbook, a different moral code than Republicans.
I'm going to take a slight difference. I was watching something earlier talking about this case, and it was talking about at what point do we allow for forgiveness? You know, no one is perfect, and we can't imagine that every person running for office is going to have an unblemished record. I mean, it's funny. So the other day I had dinner with a high school teacher, and we talked about something that happened way back then, and we joked how we were glad that we didn't have cell phone cameras everywhere at that point in time.
Right.
But nowadays, people are growing up in a world where every moment is photographed, good, bad, or indifferent. And so you're going to capture something, you're going to say something that's going to upset somebody. So, how do we create space for people to be able to be imperfect, to forgive, to have their actions show that they forgive, and be able to run? In this case, it's a little bit different because the allegations are a little fresher. It's I always tend to believe victims, but I also believe people have a right to a trial, to be able to be tried in court. So we haven't had that ability to do that. It's too recent. If they would do proper vetting, he would have known that all these things would have come out, and it would have been a distraction and a very sensitive race. So I don't think Democrats in this case are making the wrong move. I think in general, as a society, we have to create space for forgiveness and for people to run for office who are not these perfect images of in the past.
Well, shifting gears, there is a piece. There's a piece that is out that's asking whether AI can equalize political campaign advertising or whether it just becomes a faster, cheaper tool for spreading lies. Out, pop culture and politics collide right here. What's your read?
Well, listen, let's not pretend like politicians haven't been lying for a long time. I think what AI is doing, in my opinion, is not rewriting that narrative, but what it's doing, it makes the lie look expensive. It makes the lie sound official. It moves it fast through the ecosystem better, right? It gives us this kind of dressed up luxury feel good that we should trust. And as you know, this new generation, they really value trust. Like my generation, I'm Gen X, right? You had to have achievement. You had to have success and you had to have experience in order for us to trust you, right? The baby boomers, you had to be, what school did you go to? How long have you worked in the industry? How did you serve? You had to be convinced by that resume. This new generation, the millennials and the Gen Zs, they are all about how does it look and how does that look make them feel. And that's when it becomes dangerous because now anybody can make something a lie, a slander, any ugly thing. They could turn a campaign into a smear campaign against someone, and depending on how they craft it and how they make it look, people believe it without checking sources because those generations don't check lived experiences and background and where do they go to school and how long have they been in politics. It's not required anymore. So for me, that's the part of AI that really frightens me, and it takes it from elevating things to making things very dangerous.
Vincent, from an impact and equity lens, who benefits and who gets hurt first?
Did I lose you all?
When no, you're still there. We can hear you. But back to Vincent, I was saying from an impact and equity lens, who benefits and who gets hurt first when AI generated disinformation, when it hits communities that are already targeted by voter suppression tactics?
I think if we take a step back on this topic, the AI industry is flooding the political airwaves with all kinds of money. And they're using AI, they're using regular tactics to be able to get their way. They're having a really big impact on primary elections. So that way, if there are people who don't support their view on regulation, they try to make it so that the average voter doesn't even see them. And by and large, from a 2-to-1 ratio, they've been giving money to Republicans. So we can look at the ads, at the product of the industry, and talk about the impact it's having. But I want to take a bigger step and look at the industry and how they're impacting the choices that we have as voters, and the way they're impacting the election process is definitely having a negative impact on people who look like us, people who want to make sure that their water is not being sucked up by data centers and so on and so forth. So we need to do more to make sure that we're looking at how they're impacting our election process.
Well, speaking of doing more, we know that there are Republicans that are attempting to do more to prove that Mitch McConnell is alive. Republican leadership is trying to tamp down growing speculation about Mitch McConnell's health as a quiet rebellion builds within the GOP ranks. Al, what are you hearing?
All right, I'm trying to be as respectful as I possibly can, because this is a person that is dealing with health issues, and I do wish him the best as it relates to recovery. And even as an elderly person, being a caregiver for my elderly parents, the dignity part of that, I totally get it. But let me be very clear about what I'm saying. You serve in a public office. You don't serve in a private family office where everything is based around privacy. You serve in a public office. You've been doing it for decades. So now that you are frail and that you are sick, you can't just decide that you want to check out and keep that private. Especially not when your whole side of the lane drugged Joe Biden like he was like a rag doll. If he misspoke, if he paused for a sentence, if he stumbled, his cognitive abilities were questioned. His health was a question. Was he able to lead? Only for now, when it's on your side of the aisle, when it's one of your family members, you now want privacy. No, it doesn't. We're going to have the same heat. We're going to show up the same visceral, disgusting narrative that you did when it was happening on our side of the aisle. Unfortunately, this is emotional for me because I am tired of this administration having a double standard across the board about everything. I guess if nothing else, they're consistent, right? But it's just not fair. What you dish, you should be able to receive when it's your turn.
And speaking of folks dishing stuff out, a lot of folks are paying attention to what LAPD is dishing out, or at least intending to dish out in 2028. LAPD is actually considering canceling police academy classes just to free up more officers for street patrol ahead of the 2028 Olympics. Vincent, what's your gut reaction to that kind of short-term staffing logic?
I think it's BS. I think if they go through with that, it will be a shame, because the Olympics is an opportunity to show our city to the world. And what do you want to show them? Police? That's not the LA that I want the world to see. You know, the LA 84 Olympics set the model for the modern Olympics. It was the first one to turn a profit. There was a foundation created by the profits from that Olympics that's still helping people in inner cities and underserved children to be able to have access to play and athletic activities and whatnot. And if we can't recreate that success in LA for the next Olympics and do it safely with the police we have now, because I'm certain we have more police now than we did then, even as a percentage of the population. And I don't believe that we need to have more police. This would be a disaster. And I'm sure people will fight against it.
And there are a lot of people who point to the fact that, you know, cities like LA have record low crime right now, right? And so what's the justification for even more police when you have record low crime? And so obviously an issue we're going to continue to track. When we come forward, we got one more story before we close, and it's a big one. A new global cancer report from the World Health Organization You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We close today. It's time for the quiet part out loud. And we close today with something bigger than any one headline. The World Health Organization is out with a new report projecting cancer cases will soar worldwide. And this part matters most to us. It points to persistent inequities in intervention, in diagnosis, and treatment. Translation, it's not that we don't know how to catch cancer early or treat it well. It's that access to that knowledge, access to that care is still split along the same old lines: income, geography, and yes, that's right, you guessed it, race. Now, I don't know a single family in our community, mine included, that hasn't been touched by the disease in some form or another. A mother, an uncle, a coworker, a pastor, and too often our stories involve a diagnosis that came late, not because the disease was sneaky, but because the system was slow to listen to us. It was slow to screen us. It was slow to believe our pain was real. So here's my ask today and every day: check on the people you love, not just how are you, but really ask. Encourage the screening. Sit with somebody at the appointment that they're scared to go to alone. We cannot out-argue a global health inequity in one broadcast, but we can absolutely make sure that the people in our own circle are not falling through the cracks because nobody asked twice. In our remaining minutes, Vincent and Al, I want to give you a chance to quickly sort of speak the name of anyone that you know that is a survivor or whose story should serve as an inspiration that encourages us all to pull up and show up for people fighting cancer.
Well, I'll share. My mother had cancer, and luckily she beat it. It was caught very early. She is someone who avails herself of healthcare, was able to find it early and get treatment. A friend of mine named Jack, he felt something in his side, his abdomen. He went to doctor once. Oh, it's nothing. Twice. Oh, it's nothing. So he went to a different doctor. That doctor said, oh, you're going to surgery tomorrow. And it turned out that he had cancer. He has treated it in different ways for a while, and ultimately he died of it. Now, we won't know if that doctor the first time would have listened and done the right things, would he still be alive today? But it's definitely a tale of two cancer diagnoses, where one found it early, got treated early, and lived. The other one, it was not found early, and now they're dead.
Al, in about a minute.
I want to speak to my brother, Ed Reynolds, who stage 4 cancer and, was able to beat it. He's still in remission right now. And I think the sad part is one thing that we're all understanding, especially in the African-American community, as we are getting the diagnosis later, it is putting a financial crisis in our community in a deeper level than it ever has before in order to just live. And I think that's the part that we've got to be more vocal about. And that's the effects of cancer, not only in the body, but on the community, because I'm telling you, he's walking away from this with, a bill close to $500,000. And he's in his 60s. So when he should be in his golden years of enjoying his life, he now has this increased pressure and stress of now protecting his legacy and the wealth that he passes on, because a part of that wealth is going to be taken. And in many people's cases, it's going to be the transfer of debt, which is a scary conversation, but we definitely should start having it.
Well, thank you to both of you for doing your part to seed that conversation to all of us. That is our show for today. Vincent Jones, Al Reynolds, thank you both. To everybody, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners that are watching and riding home with us, take care of your body, take care of your peace, take care of each other. Remember, don't panic, organize, do what you can from where you are with what you have, but by all means, do something. My thanks to the entire village that produces A More Perfect Union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer, brother Andy, to our show producers, Faraji and Art. We thank all of you. We'll see you tomorrow, everybody. You've been listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.